Today. Afrique Today, pour ceux qui ne connaissent pas, c'est la télévision de la diaspora basée aux États-Unis. Et je m'appelle Alain Pierre et je vous parle actuellement en direct des États-Unis. Et nous fêtons aujourd'hui ici la fête de la jeunesse. Et nous sommes en direct avec le Cameroun, avec la jeunesse du Cameroun. Et vous avez suivi quelques autorités actuellement du Cameroun. Et nous allons continuer dans ce sens. C'est toujours Afrique Today. Alors, beaucoup de personnes ne savent pas que comment regarder Afrique Today. Vous pouvez aller sur Facebook, YouTube, Twitter et tout simplement télécharger les applications d'Afrique Today. Alors nous allons donc continuer avec notre programme, un programme hyper chargé aujourd'hui. Alors nous allons donc recevoir actuellement un leader, Dr Liza Ekole, qui est she's a CEO, Collaborative Relational Intelligence Leadership Inc. Please, docteur, c'est à vous la parole. Merci.
Oh, thank you for the wonderful introduction, sir. Again, my name is Dr. Liza Ekole. And to add, I am the daughter of the late Honorable Dr. Peter Akumfomo. I am based in the United States of America. The Minister of Youth Affairs and Civic Education, His Excellency Manuna Fotso, the Minister of Employment and Vocational Training, His Excellency Issa Chiruma, the President of the Cameroon National Youth Council, Ms. Fadimatu Iyawa, all protocols respected. It is a providential privilege for me to speak to the Republic of Cameroon on the occasion of the 56th National Youth Celebration of the nation. I would like to profoundly thank Mr. Fabian and the team for putting this together and for choosing me to be the keynote speaker to such an important event. Today, I would like to talk about misinformation. And the title of my presentation is Collaborative Relational Intelligence, a framework to combat misinformation in this relational age. I will start by asking you this question, and this may sound really provocative. Have you earned the right to lead? And I know you are thinking, I am a leader, therefore I have earned the right to lead. And if you are a student, you're probably telling yourself, I am just a student, still trying to get there. Well, I have news for you all. As a human being, you are a leader. As a matter of fact, you had to lead yourself to this meeting today. So let's go back to the question. Have you earned the right to lead? And if you have, how well do you know yourself? How well do you understand others in this relational age? How intelligent are you in receiving and communicating information to others based on their unique style in this age? We have gone through so many different ages in life, and we are in an age where how we communicate to others plays a pivotal role because we are in the age called relational age. And we will dive into that deeper later. By the way, there are different types of leadership that I have studied, but I'm just going to touch on a few. There is the intra-part to leadership, which is leadership with yourself. And that is why I mentioned earlier that as a human being, you are a leader. There is an inter-part to leadership. That is leadership between you and somebody else, leadership between two companies or two countries. There is a spiritual part to leadership. There is a political part to leadership. But what I want to focus on today is the psychology to leadership. Psychology is the mental processes that governs our behavior. And in leadership, this aspect is often not talked about. And to me, it is one of the most important part of leadership, because until you understand how psychology affects the way we do things, a lot of things will be hard to grasp. Today, I would like us to go deeper into misinformation. I call it a virus that is hurting not just those in the Western world. In fact, it's hurting those of us in Africa, because when we take this information, this misinformation, let me put it that way, we don't use it to our advantage. We instead use it in a way that is detrimental to us, because there's a way that you can use misinformation to your advantage. It just depends on what kind of information it is. So for example, in politics, misinformation might be useful to some candidates because they use it for their political advantage. And study now shows that misinformation misinformation is on the rise. And this is because of the availability of the internet. And with social media, a lot of information is passed out there that is not being censored properly. But what I want us to realize is that there is a reason why people are prone to believing misinformation, because there is something that is triggered in our brain. And that is why the psychology to leadership is really very pivotal. So let's dive into what misinformation is. Misinformation basically is false information that is being passed out regardless of the intent. But I also want to compare it to disinformation. Disinformation is false information passed out, but it could be done consciously or unconsciously. How does our personality affect the way we perceive misinformation? Because unless we're able to go into this depth and into this fine print, it's going to be hard for us to be able to combat misinformation. And with that being said, I want to just transition. This is like a mini structure of the brain. What this is telling us is that we have gone through different ages in life, okay? And now we are in that age where they say relationship, how we relate to others, really accounts for 85 to 95% or 90% of how we succeed as leaders, as individuals, and as youth. So IQ now accounts just for 4 to 10%. IQ is what we know, the knowledge. And how did we get to this point? You know, we've moved through different ages in life, you know, the gathering age, farming, hunting. We moved into, you know, manufacturing. Then technology came with computers. When computers came, a lot of people now became knowledge worker. And so what people are looking for now is not the knowledge, because we have overload of that. We're looking for good experiences, and good experience only comes when we relate with people in the right way. So the right brain now is the focus now of this age for us to be successful as individuals, as youths, and even as a nation. We have to realize that how we relate to others matters. And it also boils down to the information we give, how we relate when deciphering information becomes really very, very pivotal. And that is why I asked the question, how well do you understand the age in which we are? So now I will just go back to CRQ, because I said collaborative relational intelligence will be the framework from which we will talk about misinformation. What is CRQ? Collaborative relational intelligence is a relational model of human behavior. That one is intentional, and it starts with knowing yourself, understanding others, gaining value in the differences, and applying this knowledge for a shared or a win-win interaction, okay? And they say knowledge and wisdom equals to understanding. You know, with humility, I would like to share that this is my patented leadership framework that is being utilized now by lots of, you know, even Fortune 500 companies in America, and it's been used to transform the life of individuals and organization. Why? Because it really aligns with the age in which we are. And I want to just share this because I want us, we're going to get into something deeper, but I want us to know how valuable this is. So I've used this to train so many people from different walks of life, Harvard University. But this last year, late last year, October, you know, this Dematic Women Network that brings together vice presidents from this company based in the UK, Canada, Mexico, United States, and they wanted a speaker that would lead their summit. They had two speakers, one in the UK and myself were the two finalists. But at the end, they all voted for me to do their summit. Why? Because they realized the importance of the age in which they are, and they paid millions of CFA for 1 hour presentation. What I am saying is that as individuals and as a nation, we have to realize that we are in an age where we need to do things differently and think differently. Unless we're able to do that, it will be hard for us to conquer or to combat this disease called misinformation. Why I call it a disease, it's not just a disease, it's become an epidemic because it has led to so much conflict and, you know, mediocre lifestyle in us as individuals and even as a nation that we really need to start from the source. So now misinformation is something that is juicy. It is juicy for those who want it to gain something in people. Why? Because, for example, marketers, like really savvy marketers in the United States, will use what they call cognitive bias, because they know that our brain plays a lot in the way that we perceive misinformation. They use it to their advantage. Why is it so? The reason why misinformation is gaining grounds, and is gaining grounds even when people have the facts, is because we have an area in the brain that prevents us from perceiving things right based on what path we choose to take. What do I mean by that? I like to slow down and I just go deeper into this, because if I want us to get anything from my presentation today, it's how the brain causes us to perceive and promote misinformation. Now, when information comes to us, let's say you get into an external event, or let's say somebody is discussing something political or religious. What happens is information gets into your brain, and we all have filters based on how we were raised, based on our personal experiences, based on who we look up as a role model. That filter will either filter this information in one or two ways. It will either delete some of it, generalize it, or distort it. It's going to receive what is more familiar to them. And then when we take this information, it goes now into our conscious or our conscious mind. Mind you, our subconscious and our conscious mind accounts for 90% of our brain. We are only 10% in the conscious state, okay? And so when we take this information, our external behavior now is being formed based on how we perceive this. So that is why they say everything we do is based on perspective. So we are neither right or wrong, it's just the lens through which we are seeing it. What is very unique and important about collaborative relational intelligence is the fact that we train individuals to be able to challenge their unconscious mind. Because when you don't challenge this unconscious mind, when you take information the way you take it, you end up exhibiting behaviors that you don't even realize you are exhibiting. So for example, when fake information comes in, for example, let's say you have two political candidates going for election. You know, a study was done in 2020. It shows that two political candidates stood for an election, and they asked 30 people that were watching. They said, tell us, who flip-flopped more. The study showed that those that supported a specific candidate said they did not flip-flop. And those that supported the other one also said the same thing. But when they studied their brain, they realized that those that supported their candidate, there is a part in the brain called the prefrontal cortex that helps us to reason. That area of the brain was inactive. Where it gets into this is the conscious part of the brain. What was more active was the part that is, below here, that deals with emotions. And what happens is that when you want information that confirms with your existing belief, you connect with that fake news in that emotional way. And when you connect to them in that emotional way, what happens is there's a substance in our brain called dopamine. That dopamine is released and it makes you happy. So inconsistent with what we are saying about fake news, it is very, very common that somebody from, let's say, a Christian will see a news from a Christian source more favorable than a Muslim will see that news. Why? Because there is something in our brain that is greater and bigger than what we are perceiving. So unless we know that we have something fundamental that is causing us to affect this fake news, to be more prone to accepting fake news, it's going to be hard for us to really, really be able to combat it. Okay. And so if you go on Facebook, they say, I think it was in 2020, they realized that the highest number of clicks were seen more towards fake news than really facts, because people are looking for what will conform with their existing beliefs. So they call that confirmation bias. So your story just confirmed what I was already believing. So it is really tough to combat fake news, but we can come around with. And there are some tips I have to propose here. So some tips for us to be able to combat fake news, because our youths are combated with this, or they are bombarded with this. And then with social media, it does not really make it easy. And because they are exposed to all of this, it's hard for them to really live the life and to be able to exercise their leadership potential or maximize it in the way that will enable them to be able to achieve whatever they want in life. So the first tip I want to give is you have to realize that misinformation occurs. When you acknowledge that, is the first step to combating it. The second tip is recognizing and identifying it. So for you to recognize and identify it, remember you have a blind spot because you also have limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs is that you're going to see things through a lens, and that lens is either going to delete, distort it based on what you already believe in, right? So you recognize it and you identify it, but for you to be able to objectively do that, you receive every information with healthy skepticism. What does that mean? It means you are just willing to be able to take information and do some maybe a little bit of research so you can have logical reasoning or understanding of that specific information, okay? And I would tell you that this is something that I started doing a long time ago, just realizing that, you know, information is not information unless you have something to stand on. And I was reading this book by a great Christian author by name Jonathan Edwards. He says, you know, make sure you train yourself, train your mind, so you know the truth for yourself, so that way no other person can convince you. So convince yourself so others cannot convince you. It does not mean that you cannot change your mind, but it means that if you have the foundation of something, if you know the truth about something, it is hard for somebody to mislead you. And I've always lived with that. So regardless of what happened, I don't care if it is news, I don't care if it is just education, I make sure I take time to really study to find out what is it here that, you know, I need to know for them. And I think that has actually helped me to grow by leaps and bounds intellectually in so many different ways. The other point about healthy skepticism is that it's good to always do what they call self-introspection. Self-introspection just means you pause and you replay your day. When I do my training, I always tell people, replay your day. Just think about the activities that you do in a day. And when you think about that activity, ask yourself objective question. How was I today? Was I sincere with myself? I tell you this, why there might be no police policing you, maybe because you are a top leader, or maybe you are a student, you think that, well, I'm too young to be faulted. We already have something called our conscience. Our conscience is our human police that will trigger us to know that something we did is right or wrong, but it depends on whether we are open to that, okay? And I tell people that it is one thing if somebody lies to you. When you start lying to yourself, it's called self-indictment, and that is so pitiful. So we want to make sure that we objectively do self-introspection and ask yourself as a leader, am I leading objectively? Am I combating misinformation with trusting and correct information, or am I combating misinformation with more misinformation? It's up to us. The other thing we can do successfully is activate our conscious mind. Remember, those other people there, they favored one candidate because their prefrontal cortex, which is an area of decision making, was not active. There's a 5-second technique that you can use to activate your conscious mind that will bring you to the awareness, and it will help to clear your mind psychologically so you are more objective. But we'll not get into that today. The other important thing is to build rapport. Now, if you want to combat misinformation, and you know that people that believe misinformation, they believe it and they are more favorable to them from an emotional standpoint. You want to make sure that you communicate the truth now from an emotional standpoint. That way your information too becomes relatable to the receiver. And, you know, to leaders that are here, I think it is important that when you have communication personnel, they understand what it really means to be able to communicate out there. You are communicating to people in a way that will help them or morph their thinking towards a specific direction for what is right, okay? We will get into rapport briefly later. But the other thing I want to encourage is that we need to be able to introduce, you know, this kind of training in curriculums for our students so they can have open mind when they step into a situation. First, they have to know that misinformation is an epidemic, and that too, misinformation will limit the way they grow in life. I would like to just give a little bit of example here. I have something that I make sure I do, maybe because, you know what, I am really in tune with this kind of learning, CRQ. But when I step into a situation, I make sure I try to put my biases out. I am trying to learn something new every time I meet somebody. So the first time I meet His Excellency Harry Etundi, I said, wow, I'm going to be in the presence of an ambassador. For anyone to become an ambassador, there must be something really unique in them. So when I walked into that meeting, I had an open mind. And because I had that open mind, the ambassador himself does not know that he has actually helped fine-tune my listening ability. Because when you know yourself, you know your blind spots. And when you know your blind spots and you're open to learning, you're looking for opportunities to better yourself. There is something he does. He listens very attentively, okay? But he listens and he takes notes. And when he takes notes, when you are speaking, it shows that he's respectful of the speaker. That is something I used to do sometimes, but after really interacting with His Excellency Harry Etundi, it's something I do all the time now. You see, I have always learned that listening is a very powerful technique. I teach that in my coaching program, in my training program. I talk about Nelson Mandela, but then now when you learn it from somebody that is close to home, like His Excellency Harry Etundi from Cameroon, it becomes even nearer and dearer to your heart. So to students out there, I want you to always step into situations with an open mind. You can listen to what people say, but always make sure you have a mindset of healthy skepticism. There's one other example that I'll be remiss not to give because it is very controversial, but it's helped me a lot. And that is President Trump. When he was campaigning to become president and there were so many different things in the media, I told myself, any man that will raise kids as successful as he has something that I can learn from. So what I did was I read his books. When I finally read The Art of the Deal, I learned techniques that enable me to negotiate deals that have made me successful. I learned techniques that has enabled me to cost people that owed me money to give it back to me. There is always an opportunity for us to learn. It depends the lens through which we want to see life. So I'm encouraging you students, do not have a closed mind. Do not let people think for you. Make sure you take control of your life. I don't care whether it's in the educational sphere or economic or political sphere. Make sure you are an informed citizen, okay? For the leaders, my encouragement is that I think every leader needs a coach. When you need a coach, it just means that you have somebody that asks you powerful questions that enables you to use your brain cells. They say our brains can process about 11 million beats per second, but our conscious brain only allows us to process 40 to 50. So when you work with a coach constantly, like in the Western world, that is very common, it helps you to use all of these things that are needed for you to be a successful leader. So to combat misinformation, first impression is important. First impression, even in the news that you report, is very important. Communication is very important. Verbal versus non-verbal is really important.
Mind you, only 7% of what we say, 7% of our communication is verbal. 93% is non-verbal.
Which means your tone matters, your body language matters, the words that you write in a newspaper matters. So I'm really encouraging all the leaders out there, if you have your communication people, make sure you train them on how to really do this so they can be tapping into the emotions and really targeting people in order to replace misinformation with truthful information for the greater good of us all. Virtual communication, it's very important. I just want to wrap up because here we are in a virtual age right now where people are really bound to use communication that is non-physical, it's not face-to-face. Always remember to call people's name. When you talk to people and you use their name, you build rapport. When you build rapport with people, you're bringing them to your side. Before you make a call or you want to get into a virtual conference or whatever, I always tell people smile and dial. Smile is very powerful because it causes all these happiness hormones to be released, but people can hear your smile over the phone or even over the internet. So smile and dial. But what I want us to be able to get from here today is that when you go home today, make sure you place a mirror in front of your desk. Research shows that once you place a mirror in front of your desk, it activates your prefrontal cortex because there is no way you can look in the mirror and you're frowning and you're making a call. It helps you to activate that prefrontal cortex. By the way, a British research shows that a smile is equivalent to eating 2,000 bars of chocolate. So always remember to smile. It is a language that you cannot even put a price tag to, and it's free. And then there's a process called matching and mirroring, which we'll not get into that today. But as I finalize, I just want us to remember this food for thought. Combating misinformation starts with you as an individual, because as an individual, we are the building block of a nation. If you make up your mind that you're going to do the right thing, the next person is going to do the right thing, and the ripple effect will be a nation that is rich. Mindset prosperity is the most important part of prosperity. So we are training ourselves, we are training our youths how to be able to tweak their mind, train their mind to do things right. I'll just finalize with this saying by Samuel Smile. When you sow a thought, you reap an act. When you sow an act, you reap a character. When you sow a character, you change a destiny. Thank you.